Ghislaine and Jeffrey's connections with the Kennedy family were born out of Robert Maxwell's communicated desire to hold a business or friendship alliance with the Kennedy family. And I believe he was attempting to use his daughter Ghislaine in order to infiltrate the Kennedy family and bring about some kind of a friendship alliance or a business alliance with the Kennedy family. Robert Maxwell expressed many times before he passed that he wanted his daughter Ghislaine, his youngest, his favorite daughter, to marry into a family whom he approved of. In reality, a family that would help him further his own business ventures, specifically in the United States, and he had his eye on the Kennedy family for Ghislaine, which makes sense because for years, the Kennedy family were basically American royalty. And we remember in past deep dives we've done into Robert Maxwell, we know that he was actively expanding his media empire in the United States in the years before he passed away. And Robert Maxwell and Rupert Murdoch were actively at this time before Robert Maxwell passed away in a rat race for media dominance worldwide. An alliance with the Kennedy family would have been extremely lucrative for Robert Maxwell's ambitions of expansion into the United States for his publishing and media company. Because Ghislaine became close with the Kennedy family while Robert Maxwell was still alive, and even after Robert Maxwell passed away, Ghislaine would continue now with Jeffrey to cultivate a relationship with the Kennedy family, hence why there are so many Kennedy names in the Black Book. I think it's very interesting when you compare the names of the Kennedy family that are in the Black Book and the behavior and the scandals that they engaged in, opposed to the members of the Kennedy family who are not in the Black Book. Going back to 1990, this is a photo of Ghislaine Maxwell and Joe Kennedy at Andrew Cuomo and Carrie Kennedy's wedding. So the Maxwell family and the Kennedy family had come into contact sometime before June of 1990. There's also this photo of Ghislaine and John F. Kennedy Jr. socializing. I'm not for sure what this event was, but this is from sometime in the 90s, and this is Ghislaine, and she's socializing with John F. Kennedy Jr. And I don't know if you can tell, I'll pull up another photo. Here's another shot. The woman who's sitting in between Ghislaine and John F. Kennedy Jr., who are smiling at one another, is a woman named Carole Radziwill. Here's another angle that you can see her. And Ghislaine fostered a relationship with Carole Radziwill due to Carole Radzawill's proximity to the Kennedy family, and this was a friendship that the two of them nurtured over at least a 10-year period. You may know Carole Radziwill from the 6 seasons of the Real Housewives of New York that she did, or you may recently have seen photos of Carole Radziwill and Harry Styles posted on social media together. Ghislaine Maxwell befriended Carole Radziwill because Carole Radziwill was married to Anthony Radziwill. Anthony Radziwill was the son of Lee Radziwill, who is the sister of Jackie Kennedy. This is Jackie Kennedy and Caroline Kennedy, and Lee Radziwill and Anthony Radziwill. So Carole married JFK Jr.'s cousin, and JFK Jr. and Anthony were best friends growing up. So it makes sense why Ghislaine would want to foster a relationship with Carole Radziwill so that she could get closer to a member of the Kennedy family, specifically John F. Kennedy Jr. And it has been alleged that Ghislaine and John F. Kennedy Jr. did have a romantic fling at some point, but there are inside sources who say that Ghislaine was just not his type and it didn't work out. It was a one-time thing. Ghislaine has also allegedly boasted about this encounter happening to her friends. Carole's husband, Anthony, passed away in 1999 of cancer. Carole flew out to London after her husband's passing and spent a lot of time with Ghislaine Maxwell. In fact, Carole Radziwill, who got her start in journalism working at ABC, was introduced to Prince Andrew and given the opportunity to interview Prince Andrew for Glamour magazine due to her friend, Ghislaine Maxwell. During their friendship, Carole would write a memoir about her life, and Ghislaine Maxwell would be the photographer for this memoir, which helps explain why there are so many photographs, framed photographs of Carole Radziwill in Ghislaine Maxwell's apartment. I did get a lot of requests to explain the connections between Ghislaine and Carole whenever we debunked RFK Jr.'s lies about his association with Ghislaine and Jeffrey. When we found photos of him from 2014 partying in Ghislaine Maxwell's apartment years after he proclaimed to have severed any relationship with Jeffrey and Ghislaine. And in that video, a lot of people saw Carole Radziwill's photos framed in the background of Ghislaine's apartment and have been asking me, what is the connection there? Before we just move on from the Carole Radziwill of it all, I just wanted to show you guys this photo of Carole and a baby-faced Jared Kushner. Like, I think we can all see why Ghislaine wanted to keep Carole close. Now let's talk about a few other interesting things about the Kennedys who are in the Black Book. So like RFK Jr., he was traveling on Jeffrey's plane before he was married to Mary Kennedy. He was traveling in 1993, and at that time, he was married to a woman named Emily. Their marriage ended almost immediately after this alleged trip on Jeffrey's plane. RFK Jr. continued to travel on Jeffrey's plane. These are his own words. He's admitted to this, with his second wife, Mary Kennedy, and his children as well. While still married to Mary Kennedy, RFK Jr. began dating Cheryl Hines. 2 years later, Mary would allegedly take her own life. And throughout all this time, throughout his marriage with Cheryl Hines, he continued to hang around Jeffrey and Ghislaine, but has publicly blamed his association with Jeffrey and Ghislaine on Mary, who is no longer here to defend herself and was not here when he began his relationship with Jeffrey. She was not present. And RFK Jr. continued his relationship with Jeffrey and Ghislaine after she had passed away. Senator Edward Kennedy, I think they call him Ted Kennedy, his name is also in the Black Book. He also has allegations against him of helping take out a 28-year-old campaign staffer after he offered to drive her home but ultimately drove off a bridge, freed himself from the car, and left the scene of the crime, allowing this 28-year-old RFK Jr. staffer to drown inside of the submerged vehicle. And he did not report this happening. It wasn't for several hours that any authorities or anyone even found the vehicle or her body. Circumstances of the case, the factual information we have is very alarming. And that's very interesting that out of all the Kennedys, we have this guy in the Black Book. Because yes, while scandal and the Kennedy family go hand in hand, not all of the Kennedys were scandalous people. They weren't. But it definitely seems like the ones who had some kind of scandal surrounding them were certainly in the Black Book. So in 1991, Ted Kennedy's nephew, William Kennedy, was charged with R-wording a girl inside of his uncle Ted Kennedy's home. What happened was in 1991, Ted Kennedy and his nephew were at a nightclub. Ted Kennedy's nephew brought home a girl to his home where she would go on to be R-worded, and his nephew was charged. And Joe Kennedy, I think Joe Kennedy's big scandal was how he left the scene of a car accident, caused an 18-year-old girl to become paralyzed, something very bad like that. We have Kerry Kennedy and Andrew Cuomo, a wedding that we know Ghislaine Maxwell was in attendance at. And we know Andrew Cuomo, who is also Kennedy adjacent, has a major problem and a long list of allegations when it comes to SA, physically and verbally. Now, I just think all of this is very interesting because there was clearly a coordinated effort to try to bring the Kennedys in under their wing for many reasons, I assume. There's a lot of reasons why they could assume that the Kennedys might become the future political ruling class. Ghislaine probably wanted to honor her father's wishes by bringing this one plan, this one thought that he had to fruition. One more thing about Carole Radziwill. In present day, she has downplayed her relationship that she had with Ghislaine Maxwell, minimizing it a lot. And I think it's very interesting because there are two figures who were friends of Ghislaine Maxwell, who were both friends with her right around the same time period, and she was definitely involved with Jeffrey. They both handled the scandal of Ghislaine and Jeffrey and everything breaking so differently, and it's very interesting to me. So Carole Radziwill has tried to minimize her friendship, her involvement with Ghislaine Maxwell. There's another friend of Ghislaine's who was in the same kind of shoes, but acted the complete opposite. When the scandal broke, she denounced Ghislaine Maxwell and her friendship loudly and proudly. She went to the FBI and told them everything she knew, which helped the case progress. She was one of the first figures who confirmed that there was recording and audio devices all over Jeffrey's plane and all over his properties. She even wrote a book called Trash: Encounters with Ghislaine Maxwell, where she goes through details, different concerning behaviors that she saw throughout her relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell and her hindsight 2020. So the next person who we dive into this week, before we start diving into the Les Wexners or a ranch kind of timeline, is Christina Oxenberg. She is the aunt of India Oxenberg, who was in the NXI IVM cult. That will also segue us into the other connections between that specific cult and powerful figures who Jeffrey was very, very closely associated with. I think you're going to be very alarmed when you see the crossover between that specific cult and some of the names on Jeffrey's black book. So we'll get into it. We've got a lot to get into this week. So that's all for now. I'll be back with more.